Hi, Sandy.
Good evening, Dr. Fagley.
Would you like me to do the sharing of the presentation, or are you going to do it?
I will let you, since I'm going to be perusing all of the questions that are coming in, if you don't mind.
That is fine.
Sandy, do you want to start sharing too and saving of and all those
Yes,
things?
we're on YouTube now. So hi, everyone on YouTube. We haven't actually started yet, but we're live. All right, let me thank you. Thank you for the reminder, because we do know every now and then, and we are recording at this point as well. So, Ms. Emanuel, did you get back into your comfy chair, into your good desk chair?
I did, and I had to readjust the seat because the kids readjust the seat.
I'm not even going to ask if you had to make it lower.
Well,
I know what I would have to do.
Well, I know. Okay, so this is the child who, okay, so for those who are watching our earlier chat today, I had to take in another room because my child decided to take over my desk since I got a new chair. He is the one that is shorter than me, but for some reason he put it all the way up, just Indian style, while he's doing his Zoom calls. So I had to readjust the chair. Good times.
All right, it is 7 o'clock by my clock. Are we ready to go? Everybody good? All right, then we are going to get this superintendent parent chat started. Welcome everybody. We have people who are still coming in, and we're glad that you have all joined us. I was trying to count up, and I'm not sure. I think this may be our 9th or 10th or 11th superintendent parent chat. We started in June with the intention of doing 5 leading up to the start of school, to be able to share information and to answer your questions and to respond to things real time with our parents. And as we've gone on, we've found that there's a need to continue to do so. So we're going to stick with it as long as we need to be doing this. So I'm Sandy Claus. I'm the coordinator of communications and community relations. I forgot who I was for a second. It's like, wait, what is my job? And happy to be kind of hosting tonight. We're joined by Dr. Fagley, who is the superintendent, Dr. Whitehead, our assistant superintendent, Dr. Kilmetz, our director of curriculum, Mr. Grinstead, our director of athletics and activities, and Ms. Emanuel, who is our board president. So we've all kind of taken turns being on or off of this. Most of us on here have been on most of the chats. So tonight we're going to really focus on trying to answer your questions. So we know the board has been receiving a lot of questions over the last couple of weeks, as have the administration, and we're going to try and really focus on those questions. In the webinar feature, the Zoom webinar feature, there's a Q&A at the bottom of the page. If you're of your screen, you can type in questions throughout the evening. If something strikes you, or if you have a burning question right now, please go ahead. We will be, Ms. Emanuel and I will be sharing them with the other panelists as things come in and as it's part of the discussion that they're having around specific topics. So please feel free to do that. And I think without further ado, we are going to get going. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Emanuel to get us started.
Great, thank you so much. So just to reiterate, absolutely put in your questions. Depending on how many we get, we might not get to all of them. Do want to put that out there. We're going to do our best to get to absolutely everything we can. I already see one about busing. We got transportation in our presentation. So if we don't immediately get to it, it potentially is because, you know, when I see that something like that, or Sandy sees something like that, we know it's coming up. So we might hold on to it for a little bit. Or if, for example, it's something that relates to something that's coming up, we'll hold on to it and then at the appropriate time, interject with that question. And so that really just brings us to the slide. We absolutely understand this is a very challenging time. There are lots of questions, lots of uncertainties, and we're just going to do our best to figure this out together. We're going to keep answering those questions, keep them coming, and we will move forward. We'll do what we can and do our best for our students and our families. And we just appreciate your patience and understanding.
I'd like to thank everyone for joining this evening. We know the information is changing. As a matter of fact, I just got the one question says something that was just posted a little while ago by the CDC. And I'll tell you the quick answer is we will look at that and understand what the new guidance is, and we will take everything into consideration. But tonight is our night to answer your questions to the best of our capability. And again, please keep emailing myself, Dr. Whitehead, any of the administrators and the board if you have any questions. We will do our very best to get back to you as quickly as we can. Please know that we're receiving lots of emails every day, so we may not get back to you within 12 hours. But our goal is to try to get back to you as quickly as possible. So without further ado, why don't we run into some of the questions that have already come to us? Dr. Whitehead. You're muted.
I thought this was yours.
Oh, okay, no problem. I am happy. Why the staggered start dates? Wouldn't it be better to have students back at the same time? Our staggered start times are there because we need opportunities to get each building up and going. One of the things we have heard from our pandemic team and from others is that if we bring all the students back, even if it's half the students at a time, we're going to overburden our facilities. So we are looking at bringing back folks in a stepwise fashion, opening each building, getting each building up and running, and then slowly bringing the additional students back. You'll probably hear this later, but this is one of the reasons, for example, our first graders are not coming in right away, because if we brought back all our KN1s, we would have one building at full capacity right away. So that is part of the reasoning behind why we're not bringing back students at the same time. It's been listening as we listen to the guidance we're receiving from our pandemic team and our medical advisors. So as we looked to the phased return, this is what our schedule is going to be if it is approved by the board. Now, we're showing the schedule because this is the tentative one right now. By the end of this week, once we get our new numbers in, it is possible it was changed. One of the questions we received earlier today is, how could it be 3 weeks ago you were saying, no, we can't because the numbers are going up, and then suddenly it turns around and you're saying it's possible. Well, it's possible because that's the beginning of a 3-week period. So we're always going to tell you honestly what it is at the beginning of a 3-week period. Okay, now we're starting our downward trend. We're in the process to start going. It's important that we let you know when that happens so that everyone has time to begin preparing. So we did give an announcement out last week that administration was recommending to the board for their consideration that we start bringing students back on 10/19. That would be the end of that first 3-week period if we were successful. Hopefully, we keep our numbers stable or going down from where they have been over the last 2 weeks, this week being the 3rd week. We come in, we vote on it, we sit there and say, yep, we're ready to return, and then we're back on the 19th. If, however, and I need to be honest with everyone on this one, if, however, our numbers go back up and we go a higher positivity rate, higher than 5%, or if there's a significant spike in the overall incident rate, it is very possible that administration will recommend to the board, no, it's time to put a hold on this and start another 3-week countdown. We will be letting you know that information on Monday, and we'll be letting the board know that information next Monday. But right now, the numbers are going in the proper direction, and we are hopeful that we will be possibly able to return, again, pending board approval on October 12th. There are many, many factors going into this, folks. We're trying to be as clinical as we can by using the pandemic team's recommendation and the policy lab's recommendations.
As we think about hybrid learning and what that looks like for your students, students who choose to be returning to school in person will come into the building 2 days per week and learn synchronously at home for the remaining 3 days. Dr. Whitehead's going to go into more detail as far as the schedule, but the schedule will mirror what your children are experiencing now in terms of the at-home virtual learning, with some minor changes. At the secondary level, students will be attending their classes as they would normally. And if they're at home learning virtually, they'll also attend those classes synchronously following the schedule for the day. At the elementary level, similar to what students are experiencing now, they will have most of their direct instruction, whole class direct instruction in the morning, whether they're learning in person or virtually. And then in the afternoon, most of that time will be dedicated to small group learning, again, whether you're learning virtually or whether you're learning in person. We know that teachers are going to be teaching synchronously to both the in-person students and the virtual learners at home. And of course, this is going to be a learning curve for us here at PASD, but we've done the research. We've looked at what other districts currently using this model are doing. We've looked at best practice. We've talked to our PASD teachers who are currently using this model, and we've begun discussing those recommended best practices with our teachers. So we will be prepared. Will there be some glitches here or there? Absolutely, and we hope you'll bear with us, but we do feel very prepared, and we're going to be even more prepared as the weeks go on. So we're looking forward to this new challenge.
So Dr. Kilmetz, there's a question that if we can just respond to it, that's asking about why, and this is from a kindergarten parent specifically, why are we not going to have teachers who are just doing all virtual? And the concern is that virtual learners deserve the attention they have been getting so far this year, while fully virtual. Many are concerned they will not be the case as teachers try to deal with both.
We do agree with that. And in the recommendations that we've shared with teachers, we've discussed ways to make sure that the attention is there for both the virtual learners and the in-person learners. Some districts have said that virtual learners are not going to receive the same attention as in-person learners, but that's not our intention here. Certainly, we do understand that model, presents some new challenges maybe we haven't tackled yet before, but we do feel very ready to be able to do that and to support our teachers and students in learning in that way. One of the reasons why we really wanted to try this is that it's going to enable all students to remain with the teachers that they currently know and have. And that's really, really important to us. Our teachers have worked so hard and our students have worked so hard to build those relationships with teachers, and to change all of that up, could set us back. And we don't want to do that. That's something that we feel is really important and special, those relationships. And so that's really paramount for us in learning in this way, in this hybrid fashion.
If I can just keep you for one more question. Oops, where did it go? I'm sorry, my computer moved. It was asking about, I'm sorry, I got another question in and it moved me up. It's if the students are in person in the hybrid model, will also be on Canvas and on their laptops throughout the day.
So sometimes yes, and sometimes no. In the recommendations that we've shared with teachers, that might be a learning model that some teachers utilize at certain times when the lesson really lends itself to that. But that doesn't mean that it's going to happen every day in any class, or certainly every day throughout the whole day. But it is something that works, and some districts have been using that. So it is something that we've shared with teachers as an idea, but it doesn't mean that that's how they're going to conduct classes all day, every day.
Thank you.
So I have a quick one for Dr. Fagley that is, I think it's 2 slides back, but I didn't want to lose this one. So the question is asked earlier today, Chester County recommended 5% or lower full-time in-person instruction. Will the board be voting on full-time in-person or just hybrid? If just hybrid, why isn't full person in learning being considered?
Sure, no, great question. While Chester County Health Department does recommend that, they also recommend that we must maintain 6-foot distancing at all times. And in order to maintain 6-foot distancing, the only way for us to do that is hybrid instruction. If at some point, and it doesn't look like that given what the CDC may have come out with earlier today, that they allow us to go to less than 6-foot social distancing in the classroom, then we would. If we were able to get to 4 to 5 foot, 4 foot probably, we would be able to start bringing in everyone at that point for in-person who wanted to come in. But right now with the 6-foot social distancing, we're just not able to do that. So they are correct. Chester County Health Department does say when we're below that 5%, if I remember it correctly, we could bring in. No school district has classrooms that we're aware of that can fit them all. As a matter of fact, I know 2 school districts that actually, instead of bringing half the students, have to bring a third in each day. So I'm feeling fortunate that we have that. Another good question would be, why not bring in all the K1s like you initially said you would? With 6-foot distancing, we needed additional staff in order to do that. And unfortunately, our staffing, we just don't have the staff to do that right now. Every district is facing a staffing shortage right now, and we're no different. So we're working very, very hard to keep our staffing up and to keep our staffing together. But at this moment, we don't have the necessary staff in order to run the entire K1 building the way we initially hoped we would.
One more quick one that I want to address because it gave me a little bit of panic. With the hybrid model, will there always be a teacher in the classroom? Yes. Please don't. I mean, we will always have a teacher in the classrooms. Your students will not be in our classrooms without an adult. Just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Will be. Yes. Okay.
All right. So we've talked a little bit about what we're doing. Now let's talk about when we're doing it. So the schedule, the administration recommendation, the administrative team had a great deal of conversation and research with regards to what type of hybrid schedule would be optimal, not only for safety, but for learning as well. If you look around with surrounding districts, many districts have done what they call a VAABB. Some have done an AABBV, and various different combinations of groupings of students and a combination virtual day. The schedule that we are recommending for implementation is before you're here, and it's a B virtual on Wednesday and then a B again. So on Monday, the A group of students would be in person, referencing what Dr. Fagley had said on the opening slide about keeping social distancing. The B student grouping of students alphabetically by last name would be attending on Zoom off-site synchronously again. The opposite then would occur on Tuesday with the B group, and then the A group synchronously on Zoom. Wednesday, all students would be virtual off-site, and then the repeating Thursday and Friday would be A, B alternate. Question that's been asked repeatedly, why not do A, V, B, that combination there? The administration talked long and hard about that. There are, I believe, 2 or 3 districts of the 12, but not every district is doing that combination. One of the main reasons was instructional. If you are an A student, particularly for our younger students, you would not be seeing that teacher again in person for 5 days, potentially. We felt like for our youngest learners, our neediest learners, that's a long time. And so we chose the alternating A, B. One of the conversations that's been happening in questions is about deep cleaning. That's a misnomer. If you look at CDC guidelines, while it's certainly nice to have a virtual day where quote unquote deep cleaning can be done, that's fine. But really the mantra is continuous cleaning, ongoing cleaning is essential. Even if it's the same grouping of people, physical people, same human beings entering that space, it's important that cleaning and continuous cleaning occur. And so it's not a matter of just stopping everything for that deep cleaning. While that's nice, and we will, The reason was an instructional nature as well. We believe that this schedule will not only optimize in-person learning in a safe manner, but also consistency in instruction and safety as well. So this is the schedule that we are recommending to the board.
Dr. Whitehead, when you're talking about the deep cleaning, can you just, so what are we doing? I mean, I know we've purchased equipment that will allow us to sanitize every space every day. So can you just address that quickly?
Yeah, we have misting devices that will be used throughout the hallways, throughout, especially on that virtual day. All common touch areas will be detailed clean, including stairwell railings. While they'll be clean on their routine, normal maintenance cycle, there will be additional detail given to flooring and common touch surfaces. Really are the key component on that Wednesday.
Dr. Whitehead, can you also tell us who's in the group A and who's in the group B?
Sure. That will be an alphabetical breakdown by grade. And the reason that we're doing it that way, again, similar to the schedule that we currently have, is to allow siblings having that common rotation in the common same day.
I think the question was specifically, I'm sorry, was specifically what letters of the alphabet will be in group A, what letters will be?
Dr. Killitz, I'm not sure. I think it's A.
It's A through L is
Right.
in group A, and M through Z is in group B, with a couple exceptions. So if you have siblings that have different last names, the students will follow the youngest siblings group, if that makes sense.
Our goal is to keep families together is the overall goal. And again, it will be based off the youngest sibling's last name in that family group. Okay.
Okay, so the timing of the schedule for the in-person at the elementary will be 8:40. That will be arrival time. And then dismissal will be at 3:30. We've kept the common lunch recess time that we felt that was good to keep that commonality. There was a lot of scheduling maneuvering that had to occur to make that happen. So thank you to our elementary principals and teachers. That will be from 12 to 1. Not that there will not be breaks at additional times, obviously, different breaks and spring breaks and recess time and time to go outside and get some fresh air. In addition, obviously, to that 12 to 1 time. Virtual time for elementary, the day will begin at 9 a.m. The day will conclude at 3:30. Again, there's no arrival time. Time needed for that because it's virtual. Lunch recess, again, will be consistent at that 12 to 1 time. Again, also additional brain breaks and things like that will occur throughout that day in the schedule. The secondary time, the in-person, 8:05 will be the start time. That will be both for the middle school and for the high school. So that's all secondary. And dismissal will begin at 2:53. Will happen at 2:53. The secondary virtual day, pretty much the same, but it'll be a little bit longer. The conclusion of the day will be at 3:20. I see a question about the AD.
There was a question, Dr. Whitehead, about the hybrid model. So if there's a day off, say we have a Friday off from school, would the following day pick up the pattern, or would A always have school on Mondays, in person Mondays and Thursdays, B always have school on Tuesdays and Fridays, or is it going to be dependent on days off?
So we want to keep the days consistent, is my understanding. Dr. Fagley, correct me if I'm wrong. We wanted to keep the days.
We're keeping it very consistent. It is going to be A, B, Monday, Tuesday, and then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday will be A, B. So we'll keep it consistent even if there's days off. We felt that it would just be too confusing if we sat there and started moving those days.
Real quick before we move on, I noticed that some folks are typing stuff in the chat. Sandy and I are actually exclusively watching the Q&A. So if you don't mind just retyping your questions into the Q&A, that would be greatly appreciated, because I'm not sure I could look at any more screens.
There was another question about lunches. How can we now do all lunches in 1 hour, lunch recess in 1 hour, where before it had to be over a 2-hour period? Great question. When you only have half the number or less of students in, you're able to reduce that amount of time. So we are able to sit there and get all students in for lunch and their recess in that 1 hour period of time for the K1s and actually K through 5 as we move forward. So we're really working hard to sit there and both respect the in-person and the virtual students so that folks have some consistency in what they know. Also on the virtual day, we will be running the same schedule as we have been running since the beginning of the school year. So Wednesday will always be that same virtual schedule that you know.
There are lots of questions about recess and breaks too. Do you want to cover that, Dr. Whitehead?
I'm trying, if you see them, go ahead. I'm scanning. I got 3 screenshots.
At the elementary level, I think Dr. Whitehead mentioned that there will be breaks throughout the day. Sometimes those will be outdoor breaks if the weather allows. Sometimes those will not, but they'll obviously be very structured to ensure social distancing. But they will be staggered. So it's not like the days of yore when you had, you know, lots of kids out on the playground at recess. Unfortunately, we're not able to do that. So those types of outdoor play opportunities will be structured and staggered throughout the day. So if a in-person class is taking a recess or movement break, the students at home will be also taking a recess or movement break.
There's a question here on with regards to teachers returning. I'll grab that now before we go on. Teachers will be returning in person, though teachers will have the option to teach remotely on Wednesdays on that virtual day, but teachers will be physically present while they're even teaching virtually and or hybrid on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday.
There's also a question about what if we start hybrid and the numbers start to trend backwards or go in reverse? Would we at that point sit there and go back to fully virtual? Yes, it is very possible that we will, once we're in, if the numbers go poorly, go back. It's also possible, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, if we have a number of cases, if we have an outbreak in the schools, and like I said, we'll talk about this more later, that school, class and or school would go fully virtual for a period of time. So those are all possible scenarios that will be playing out during this.
Dr. Whitehead, we do have another question about the schedule, and it says, how can secondary in person, this thing keeps moving, I'm sorry. How can secondary in person end earlier than the virtual day and still keep schedules aligned, i.e. 8th period ends at 2:53 or 3:20, depending on if you're virtual or in person?
That's a great question. Part of what we're going to be offering to the virtual students is some time after we dismiss the in-person students that they could sit there and have conversations with their teachers. So we will be running the schedule. We will be running the in-person schedule for the secondary students. That's part of the reason they're starting at 8:05. But we will also have the teachers available to answer some additional questions for the virtual students if they have any.
And on Wednesdays, the all virtual day, our secondary students will be following that virtual day schedule.
That's correct.
Important point. Thank you, Dr. I'm going to grab this one.
Sorry, real quick question about lunches. Where will students eat, in their classroom or cafeteria?
Great question. I can get that. So the elementary level will be in the classroom, grab and go, but students will be eating in their classroom. At the middle school level, we'll be splitting 2 locations. The cafeteria will be utilized as well as the LGI area of the middle school. And that's, again, to ensure that we have also grab and go. Everything is grab and go. The high school will be able to, because of their reduced numbers, Dr. Parkinson and his team, we will be able to utilize the cafeteria safely with students sitting every other seat and sitting staggered so they're not sitting directly across from each other. So look a little bit different at each level too. I just want to, this class, I just want to grab this YMCA before and after care, only because I just met with the YMCA. So we will be offering before and after care. What we will be doing, because we are starting specifically, the plan starts just with kindergarten for the first phase. And there are a number of logistics that need to be worked out. So we will, in the next day or so, we will be having the YMCA before and after care sign up on our website. It will also be on the YMCA website. We'll be pushing that out. Mrs. Claus will be pushing that out. The in-person, in location at Palk Manavon and the other schools at Barclay and Schuylkill will begin the following week. If the board approves the administrative recommendation and we begin the phase in on the 19th with the kindergartners, the YMCA would begin the following week for on-site care. The YMCA physically will be available if parents wish to drop off even that week as well. The reason for that is they too have to calculate their staffing and know how many staff that they have to have as well. And it's going to take them that week to get that up and running. We will be offering before and after.
So a couple more lunch questions. One is food allergies. How would, for students who are eating in classrooms, so especially those primary grades, how does that look, especially with the younger ones who love to run around?
My understanding working with the principals is they're working out those lunch, especially with students that have severe allergies, with some alternate locations for those students. And that's how they'll be working it out.
And usually when we have a peanut allergy in a room, that room becomes peanut free. So we will be looking at making sure that we're addressing all the needs as the nurses come back and talk to us about all the allergies folks have. There's another lunch question. Will AB days will all follow the in-person schedule for lunch, or will those be different? Again, for the elementary, everyone will have lunch from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock. At the secondary,
Noon to 1.
12 o'clock to 1 o'clock. I'm getting my times mixed up. So everyone will have lunch from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock. At the secondary level, lunches will be taking place at their regular lunch time. So there will not be that same lunch period every day at the secondary level. That will have to move to the in-person schedule that they have. Again, on the virtual day though, for secondary, all lunches will then be at the same time. I believe that is 11:30 or so to 12:05, somewhere around there.
So what will the day look like for our all virtual students? We have sort of answered some of this and we'll explain a little bit more. That the day looks very similar as it does right now. So, the schedules that we follow are going to be very similar, if not exactly the same in certain instances. But what we are again making paramount is that teachers are engaging all students, whether they're virtual students, whether they're in-person students. Those students are all going to be part of the same class, the same classroom. And so it's really important that our teachers work to engage students, especially those students who are learning at home virtually all of the time. They will continue to be met with in small groups or individually for check-ins. Teachers can bring those students to their own Zoom breakout room to have an individual conference as needed. And teachers will be available as they are right now for all students, including those students who are learning at home virtually.
Dr. Kilmes, can you just answer this? Because some students will always be virtual due to either choice or the hybrid model. Will all classwork and exams continue to be conducted and submitted via Canvas?
We are going to talk about assessments in an upcoming slide, but just to address that really quickly,
okay.
I'll address it in the slide that comes up. Okay, thanks, Mrs. Claus.
Okay, will my child need to bring their laptop back and forth to school? The quick answer is yes, if you're in grades 2 through 12. Those students will be bringing their laptops back and forth. In KN1, we are looking at having enough laptops and or desktops in each classroom that we're hoping that they will not need to bring their laptops back and forth. We've been working on this since the beginning of the year, so it's going to depend on how many computers are needed by students once we start going back and forth virtually. But that is one of our goals, is to have the students not have to bring their laptops back and forth. Obviously, we'll begin with the kindergartens first in that area. So
along those lines, Dr. Fegley, there's a question here. Will there be a technology fee if laptops are needed on days when attending in person? In this particular example, they have 2 children at home with desktops, so they don't currently have laptops. How would they proceed?
that's a wonderful question that I don't know that we figured the answer out to yet. So we will be looking at what we need to do on that. Thank you. That's something we'll have to look into.
I have seen the question that I think that was asked prior to the meeting actually starting, that someone had submitted, asking if you had not requested a laptop for use during this first part of the school year because you have a computer at home, will you be able to get a laptop then when you come into school if you're not in kindergarten or first grade?
There are laptops that for the students who have not had them and do need them. That's a slightly different question. If you wish to take that laptop, yes, then there will be that. And then for that laptop, there will be a fee, the $50 fee. For the student who only occasionally needs it during the day, I don't believe there will be, but we'll have to look at that specific instance to figure that one out. But Mr. Gibson and Ms. Kreiser did sit there in their survey. They have approximately 300 people who said, once we start returning to school, we know we need laptops, so we do have laptops ready for them.
Now we're getting to assessment. Assessment in our hybrid model or virtually, some of it's going to be very similar to what we're doing right now. So I'm sure you're aware that your children did take some standardized assessments and obviously some tests and quizzes that they've been taking while we've been learning virtually. And some of that will continue exactly as it is right now when we return in person. But there are, of course, some assessments that are better given one-on-one with a student or are best done in person. And we're going to try to schedule those as necessary if we need to. If we need to modify an assessment, perhaps a teacher is assigning a test. Obviously, we don't want some students who might be learning at home to have open notes for that test while other students who are taking it in person to not. So teachers really would make sure that students have the same accommodations as necessary. Other students who require certain accommodations, maybe students with IEPs or students who are English learners, those students will also receive those accommodations no matter what setting they are in. So whether you're learning virtually or whether you're learning in person, any required accommodations we would, of course, make sure are in place for your students. And there may be instances where a teacher might say that they want certain students to take an assessment in person instead of at home. There might be times when a teacher says, I'm going to have both my virtual students and my in-person students take the assessment today on Canvas. That might happen as well. So a lot of testing and assessment is really up to teacher discretion, except in the case of standardized assessments. And any assessment that's standardized, we make sure that we follow the guidelines set out by the organization that created the assessment.
Dr. Kimmich, before we go on with the homework slide, there's a couple of questions here regarding instruction. So I think you and I can maybe grab those really quick now. There's one of the questions speaks to an elementary teacher standing in one spot in front of the computer. No, they won't need to do that. In fact, Dr. Kimmich and I, just last week, worked with our technology associates in our technology department to kind of do a dry run through. We're in a teacher's classroom and the microphones that are on the laptops, if we'll be giving the teachers instructions on boosting the gain on their respective laptops, and the microphone can be heard throughout the room. So the teacher is not necessary for the teacher to stand in one spot as we initially had anticipated. That would be only if we're using a specific type of camera. So, so we will not do that. The teacher can turn their laptop around and you can see a panorama of the room. The other piece that was on there.
So just to clarify too, Dr. Whitehead, there might be times a teacher does choose to remain at his or her computer. So maybe it's to chat with students who are virtual and need that interaction, or maybe it's, while a video is playing to both the in-person students and the virtual students. So there might be times a teacher chooses to do that, but they do not have to.
Thank you. And the other question, it's a kind of a companion question. With regards to the students who are participating virtually will be on the smartboard, on the screen, on the board and or smartboard.
Maybe and maybe not. It kind of depends exactly on what the lesson activity is, right? So if, for example, you're having a class discussion, it's going to be really helpful for all the students in that class to see each other, whether, that's projected or whether all students are on Zoom at the same time. So those are all options for teachers.
So the intent, just to follow up, is that students who are attending virtually may be able to participate with their in-person classmates.
They
Well,
will, as the teacher directs them to do so. Absolutely. We have teachers who are doing that wonderfully and seamlessly right now.
Thank you.
Okay, my favorite subject, homework. So right now, currently, homework procedures that are in place are no homework at the elementary level unless the student needs to, to complete their assignments that were given during the day. But we really want to encourage elementary students to get out, spend some time with family, play, get outside, get some fresh air. At the middle school level, as we have been implementing for the past several weeks, it will be core subject areas only. So the core areas, big academic areas of ELA, math, science, and social studies. And that will be essential concepts. So it's when a middle school teacher really needs to emphasize an essential learning concept that could be a core anchor or standard that they will be working on. High school will be a little bit more. I saw one of the questions was the concern about screen time in high school. So we are having some conversations, the high school staff and Dr. Parkinson are having some conversations around that. That's a tough one to especially if it's an honors level or AP course. There is additional reading that needs to occur for those subject areas. It may not necessarily be homework, but it is reading for that particular higher level subject area. So high school teachers are really having conversations around balancing, that homework assignment and projects with screen time. One of the things that the high school staff really have been trying to do is move away from just writing assignments, but also trying to do some project-based so that it isn't so much screen time. But that's where we are with homework at this time.
So along those lines, while it's not homework, there was a question I did want to make sure we got to. Will virtual students still have the opportunity to request to meet with their teachers during 8th period until 3:20?
At the middle school, yes, that will still be an option as it is now.
Yes. Okay. So we've had a number of questions regarding implementations and educational plans for students who are receiving special education services and our English language development. Within special education, please know everything is IEP driven. And right now they are in the process of setting up a number of IEP meetings to go over progress to date and progress makeups that may need to occur from last year. So please, as you're having these meetings, please have that discussion about whether or not there should be a different schedule for your child if they're special education. If you're not scheduled for an IEP meeting, please call your case manager or please call the elementary supervisor or the secondary supervisor of special education and set up a time when you can have an IEP meeting and have that discussion. So all alterations to the schedule for an IEP student are going to be IEP driven, and you should reach out to the IEP team to do that.
And speaking to our English language development families, we are having another superintendent chat this Thursday where we will have interpretation in Spanish for our families. So to encourage anybody who knows anyone who would be able to utilize this to please have them join our conversation. We want to make sure we get this information out to all families, and similarly making sure that we're meeting the unique and individual needs of our students.
All right, I think I'm doing masks, right? So I see a lot of questions about masks and face coverings, or as it's officially called. So if you look at our health and safety plan, the governor's standing order as of July 1 is still standing. So universal face coverings are required. And we're all kind of living in this world right now. There's been a couple of questions about face shields. That is correct. Face shields on their own are not an acceptable face covering. Face shields can be used in conjunction with a mask. So we have a variety of masks. We actually have, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Felge, I think we have 70,000 masks at this point. We just received over 4,000 more from the intermediate unit. So we do have plenty of masks available. We certainly encourage everyone to bring their own face covering and their own face mask with regards to that. One of the questions that we are requiring masks. Masks are required. I will tell you that we recently met with the teachers that are currently providing in-person instruction, and one of the things I asked them was, what do you want to convey to your staff member who will be coming back? And they said, one of the things is don't worry about face coverings as much as you think. Kids have been doing great. So our kids that are currently in person really have been cooperative with social distancing and especially with face coverings. Students understand it. They know that it's serious. Occasionally they have to be reminded to lift it up, above their nose. But that's routine. So we do have a number of face coverings available for different purposes. Certain teachers may be using face shields in certain circumstances with regards to, we have masks that actually have lips exposed. There are times when in certain circumstances where a teacher may be giving instruction that it is necessary, and we do have those available as well. Question with regards to, what do we do if a student refuses to wear a mask? We want this to be a teachable moment for our students. It's important that students understand why we're asking them to do this. Why is it important? And we will certainly work with families and parents. Schools for years have had dress codes and safety required certain things to be worn or certain things not to be worn for safety purposes. And this is one of the most important that we've ever had. This is more than just an inappropriate t-shirt. This is very important. And so if ultimately in the end there's refusal, even though there's no health reason that the student can't wear a mask, then we'll ask the student and family if they want to participate in our full virtual program. But so far, believe it or not, masks have been going very, very well. And we're hopeful that it will continue to do so as we phase in our hybrid program.
Quick question. It's not so much tying this in, but you said based on going very well. So, and there's also, we just did the special ed piece. There's a question from a parent. Students who are currently in this are students receiving special ed services who are currently in full-time. If we return to a hybrid model, will they then have to go to a hybrid model, or would they continue with their full-time in-person schedule?
So that schedule is developed through their IEP, so they will remain with their full-time schedule. Good question.
All right, my other favorite subject, health and safety. Now, I'm going to kind of start broad on this one, and then we'll zoom down. We all know at this juncture, obviously, that 6-foot social distancing, making sure that you have proper hand washing, all of those kinds of guidelines, using sanitizer, making sure that if you are sick, please stay home, and I'll talk more about that in just a minute. All those we will be reinforcing with the students. Not just our younger students, obviously that's important, but all of our students, including older students, they will be reminded, and we'll be spending a lot of time as each grade level is phased in. That grade level group of teachers will be spending a lot of time. They understand. One of the things that our current in-person teachers told Dr. Kimlitz and I was, we needed to spend some time on that, to get them comfortable in this new environment. And so that's very important. Some things obviously physically in the building. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but just to refresh everybody's memories, hallway floor markings for 6-foot social distancing and one-way hallway traffic has been completed in all of our buildings with uniform decals on the floors. Additional posters and reminders of proper hand washing and staying home if you feel ill, etc. Those signage has been throughout the hallway, is being installed. Plexiglass where needed has been installed. Desk and floor markings for where desks need to remain. That's one of the things we're gonna have to reinforce the students. Don't move the desks around. Their markings are on the floor for that. Ventilation, we worked on filtration and ventilation. I saw one of the questions about opening windows. And certainly that's something that we can look at until the colder weather obviously gets here. But we can open windows where needed and where we're able to. But we are working on our ventilation systems and our filtration systems being upgraded. That's being completed as well. And lastly, I feel, you know, we're ready. We've had several weeks to get the buildings ready with all the proper preset for social distancing, and we feel we're there. The other piece I would say is temperature taking. A lot of folks are still under the impression that every building that you enter, your temperature will be taken, and that's not required currently right now for entrance. For entrance into a building, we're obviously going to be limiting visitors to our buildings as we have been. But if you do need to enter, you will be asked to fill out a screening questionnaire that will ask if you have monitored your own temperature and taken your temperature and that you're not running a fever. If there are circumstances where there is suspected someone's not feeling well, obviously our nurses are empowered with proper temperature taking devices quickly, the scanners right to the head, and they can do that. And we've had circumstances where that has occurred as a precaution. But universal temperature screening will not be required. A key component to this slide really is if you're sick, stay home and we'll be able to convert you to our virtual programming so you don't miss school. And that's an important key piece.
And I just want to piggyback off that and reiterate that piece. I mean, I know it sounds like we're beating a dead horse, but if your child has any symptoms, if it's borderline, and I say this as a parent who's going to be doing the same thing, you know, is it a fever? Is it not? Is 99 degrees? Keep them home, please. They get sick to their stomach. It could have been that they ate 10 tacos, but we don't know. Please keep them home. We need our kids to stay home so that we can continue the in-person learning for those that can attend. Thank you.
And your child won't be counted absent. You can still hop on virtually and learn virtually that day if your child is able to.
And I do want to clarify that one point somewhat via question, right? So there's sick enough that we're all worried and we want you to stay home. And then there's so sick that you're not really doing anything. If a child is sick enough that they cannot legitimately, participate, they can absolutely, they're sick. You send in a note the same way you would have in the past. You can email into the attendance office and email the teachers, let them know. They're not expected, when they're really sick, they're not expected to still get on. So it's this really wonky gray area right now. But in terms of, are you sick enough that you can't participate? There's the two sides of it. You can certainly participate if you're able. If you're that sick, it's understandable you would not participate.
So we've covered a little bit of this already. We've had circumstances, even in the in-person learning right now, where students or staff might not have been feeling well. And we work with the Chester County Health Department. They've been excellent to work with. We have a designated liaison from the health department that we've established a good rapport and relationship with. Our nurses, our school nurses, routinely consult with that representative from the Department of Health. We've had circumstances where quarantining or isolation was necessary as a precaution and or testing might have been recommended. And again, as we just said, we can, as long as they're physically able and not so sick that they can't participate virtually, as Ms. Emanuel said, they've converted over to do that. So the likelihood of actually someone testing positive, the testing would occur outside of school. The schools will not be testing. That testing would be recommended, and we would follow the guidance of the Chester County Department of Health, where they may recommend that. Isolation areas have been established in the schools, however, and so the nurses are properly equipped with the proper PPE to do those examinations, consult with the Department of Health, and then make any recommendations with that. Communication protocols are being fine-tuned with the Department of Health right now. There's a standard flyers that the Department of Health has that has really good references and resources for parents and recommendations to follow. And those protocols and folks would be notified, if that were to occur.
So one of the key pieces is where a person tests positive and where they are. We could go on, but it would probably be about 2 hours for us to go through all the various scenarios. what I would recommend to everybody is please go to the Chester County Health Department. Go on their site. They have put up flow charts, which we are getting ready to also link on our website, that will show you exactly how we respond to a situation. And there is a question out there, if a child tests positive, but they weren't in school and we really didn't send them home, they just test positive, would we find out? The answer to that is yes, we will, because we'll have to be part of that contact tracing. So we will be learning if children test positive outside of school, because they will be giving us a call to find out when the child was last in school, so we can sit there and work with them on the contact tracing part. But it will vary our response based off the Chester County Health Department's guidelines, which again, the easiest place to do, and I looked at these earlier today, very simple spreadsheets, very simple flow charts on how we will be following when and where and what symptoms the child is showing. So they're very, very detailed and very well done. What happened if the student refuses to wear a mask? Well, Dr. Whitehead really answered that question already. The key piece is wearing a mask shows that you have respect for your peers, respect for your colleagues, and that you care about them. And that's going to be the key piece that we're going to be focusing on. We'll have the discussions. If there's a student who for some reason absolutely refuses to wear a mask and there's no medical reason, we will be working with the family to have them continue school in the virtual world. Because again, the care and respect, it's necessary to wear a mask. It's one of the requirements that's come down from the governor's office, from the CDC, and the health department, Chester County Health Department. There's one thing they're unified on, and that is wearing a mask and the distancing. Transportation, how will this go? How it will happen? So when we start going back into the hybrid world, we will be transporting all students with our full fleet of buses. All bus routes have been set to have approximately 48 students. That's 2 students per seat as set by the Chester County Health Department. That said, since we are only running half the students on any given day, there will be less than 48 students, probably on an average of somewhere around 24 or less students on any given bus during the day. Thus, we will do our protocols, have children coming onto the bus. They fill from the back of the bus forward. We ask each student to start with 1 per seat. If it's a family member, we'll ask them to sit together. So family members will be sitting together. We fill towards the front. If a student comes to the bus and does not have a mask, the driver will hand them a mask and ask a child to put on a mask. So masks, again, are going to be required on all school buses per all the guidance that we received. The windows on the bus, as you look at this bus, you can see the first 2 windows show a little bit of a crack at the top of the window. Well, that's actually what will be the case with all the windows on the bus. They'll all be showing a little bit of a crack so we get an airflow going through the bus. And most buses have the emergency hatch at the very top. That will also be opened by 2 inches, so there will be a constant, complete airflow going through the buses at all times. All buses will be disinfected between each round. If you've been around the buildings as our buses have been coming in, you'll actually see the custodial staff out there with portable disinfectant devices. They get on the bus, they disinfect the bus, we wait 5 minutes, and the bus moves on to pick up the next group of students. At the end of the day, the buses are also disinfected. So all buses are disinfected multiple times throughout the day as with each pickup. Number of students, the general times. The bus routes are set, and we will be sending out the bus routes to you if and when we get approval to reopen the schools. So we have that ready. Mrs. Yeager and Ms. Nattle have been doing a stellar job of sitting there making sure that they have the bus runs all set up. They're ready to go, and we will be releasing them as each of the schools and as your children get ready to start coming back to hybrid learning. I would expect that to be somewhere about 5 days before the return to school. And it will be the general guidelines we had in the past. Please be there 5 minutes before the bus scheduled time and wait about 10 minutes as we sit there and make sure we get through all the adjustment periods. But yes, we do expect the buses to be running, and we expect it to go pretty smoothly, especially since we're going to be running much lighter bus loads than normal.
There is a question, Dr. Fagley, if we have enough bus drivers.
I was actually on a phone call today with Egan, with the Wolfington group. They're like the rest of us, they're very close, but yes, they have assured me that we have priority and we will have enough bus drivers. I'm not going to say it's not going to be difficult, and if you really want to be a bus driver, please call Wolfington and they will be happy to sign you up because they are still looking for more drivers. But they have told us they will have enough personnel to run all our bus runs. The safety steps that will be in place, again, we talked about the windows being down a little bit, the airflow constantly going through the bus, masks being worn all the time, and having the bus fill from rear to front per Chester County Health Department guidelines, and only family members sitting together if at all possible. Again, we don't expect the buses to be full, especially since we're going to be coming in the AB format. How it will work if I choose to drive my child to school? Same way as it always has right now. And we expect it to actually go pretty smoothly. We will be watching it carefully, but remember, again, we will have half the students or less coming to a school at the start. And actually, even when we're all in, only half the students will be in. The principals are looking at some extra areas. There's areas around school. There's areas around Barkley where we can set and say all fifth graders will be picked up in certain areas. Same for Manavon. We'll be looking at those, having slightly different areas for pickup, and all those instructions will be coming to you from the building principal level. But we expect it to actually go pretty smoothly at the start. We're also assuming that at least half of the people will be riding the bus. Half will be riding the bus. If it's more than that, we will then look at possibly even redoing our bus area drop off, because then we're not having the number of students come in from the buses.
Dr. Fakel, if I can just interrupt for 2 seconds. I know it's almost 8 o'clock and we typically end right at 8. However, I know we have a number of things that we still want to make sure we get through. So we are going to stay on longer than 8 o'clock tonight, just letting everybody know.
Yep. Okay, great. Why don't we go to sports and competition?
Thank you, Dr. Fagley. I think that, just to kind of review here what we've done with sports here the last couple months, we got our kids back on campus on July 6th to start involuntary captain's practices, if you will. And I think it's very important to note that we were very cautious really from the beginning on what this looked like and how we did it. We tried to stay socially distant at all times, and it wasn't even until late August where we started incorporating drills with kids anywhere close to each other, really. And that's from soccer or football or whatever sport we were playing. We really didn't even get to shared equipment until a couple weeks ago. And we were approved a long time ago to start doing some of those things with constant sanitization. But we were very cautious, and I think our coaches and our athletes did a tremendous job of wearing their mask every day, staying as socially distant as possible way, avoiding any big outings and gatherings outside of sports. And we've really been able to bypass any really unfortunate situations that have happened even locally at some other schools. So I think it's just very important to note that we've really kind of matriculated and built up to where we are now. Where we are now is we're doing organized team practices. We're just in a situation where we are hoping that our kids get an opportunity to play and compete. And as Dr. Fagley said earlier, those are all based on numbers. Our board and our administration are very numbers driven within the county, within the CDC. And we understand that we're now safely performing practices in a team environment, preparing for competition if our board on October 12th deems that safe and necessary at the time. So I think, what I want to reiterate is that, it's been a very gradual progression. We've been really able to control the environment, and that's really only responsibility of coaches and players. And we've really done a good job at it. I'm really proud of all of our athletes and, really doing the best they can to make sure we do this safely, and we give our board some real options, because if we don't do this safely, we don't give our school board any options. We don't give our administration any real options. So I think we've done a really good job to this point of working our way up to this. Let's hope that the numbers stay low. And hopefully the school board gets an opportunity to recommend that we go ahead and compete in fall sports.
Okay.
There is a question here that's I'm just going to throw it in now. That's going into activities. So it's just asking about, and I feel like they go together. An intangible that's been lost about the social learning by participating in sports clubs and other extracurricular activities, after school activities. How is this being considered and included in the plans for moving forward?
I think what you've seen over the last couple of weeks is, hopefully, if your child was interested in being involved in any activities, whether clubs or activities, a lot of teachers have started reaching out. You've seen mass communications going out about class officers, student government, all those sorts of things to get kids engaged and keep them active. And then kids on the non-sports side, I think we've done a really great job over the last 3 months of engaging our sports kids. And I think over the last couple of weeks, what you've seen now is more and more teachers and advisors send out information to start engaging kids in other ways. I think it's a really important piece, and we know we can't duplicate what you can do in a live school environment. But I think we're really doing as best we can. Our advisors are doing as best we can to provide our kids opportunities. And we know some of that stuff is taken on Zoom and through conference calls, and we realize it's more screen time and things like that. But what I'm getting from kids is they're really enjoying the engagement piece, talking about things that really matter to them and things they're really interested in. So I think you're starting to see more of that here in the last few weeks.
And Mr. Grinstead, I don't know if you can respond to this or not, but there are questions about what are we going to do to make this special for our seniors? Homecoming should be coming up in a couple of weeks. Do you know, are there plans that the high school is making specifically around looking at opportunities to make it special for seniors?
I think we're always trying to figure out what we can do safely. I think what we've done here in the last couple of weeks is we've hosted a movie night, we've hosted a cornhole tournament, and I know those aren't senior specific. As we go through the year, and guys, I think it's very important to know too, we're still very early in the school year. So I think all of our hope, I know it's our administration's hope, I know it's our school board's hope, is that we're going to get a chance really soon here to be back in school. And I think, with coming to that, I think it's going to open the door for us to start to engage in more activities and provide some more opportunities for all of our groups. But I think more importantly, our seniors, everybody knows the senior year is a very important time for kids. They've worked very hard to get to this point. And I would imagine as we go through the next couple of weeks or months, there's going to be more and more ideas. Our National Honor Society students have done a tremendous job of coming up with different opportunities and different things pretty much on a weekly basis. I meet with Mr. Winters constantly, and I think that as we go through, we'll come up with more ideas and we'll push them out as we get them.
It is something that we've been all looking at, Mrs. Claus. Dr. Parkinson, Dr. Whitehead, and myself are going to be meeting with students from the high school on this Wednesday. And this will be one of the topics that's on there. What can we do to make sure not the seniors feels good, but also all the students are feeling good at the high school? Because it is a special time in their lives, as it is in all the schools. But the activities really make high school. And we need to keep looking at that as to what can we do and do safely. That actually brings us up to our next steps. What are some of the next steps? One of the first big next steps, and we still have a lot of questions and we're going to get to them, so don't run away, is we need to keep looking at the numbers. And the numbers are going to be coming out this Friday. And based on those numbers, administration will either continue to recommend a phased reopening, or if the numbers are not good, it's possible we will say, nope, it's time for a reset. And that will be the recommendation that goes to the board for their consideration on Monday. So please, Phoenixville, we've done a great job. At one point, we were actually down to 3 or less, 6 incident cases. We were rocking it. We've had a bit of a rough spell, so is Chester County overall. It is my hope that we will be able to be back because our numbers will keep going down here, especially in Phoenixville, and that we will be able to get back to in-person learning safely. It will be hybrid. It has to be hybrid, as we said earlier, because of the 6-foot distancing requirements that we must meet. And as more and more is learned, I am sure things will change on that. And keep watching for the weekly updates. That's what's going to make the difference. But that's one of the first steps that we have to do. And the board will be looking over everything and making a decision on the 12th as to whether we open or whether we remain in the virtual world for a little bit longer. And that's going to be a tough decision. And it's going to be a decision I'm sure they're going to be making by looking over all the information that is presented to them. So those are the first next steps. Some of the other steps that we're in the process of doing is making sure that we are fully ready to open. Dr. Whitehead had talked about the ventilation earlier. We're feeling pretty good about our ventilation because we can actually open up those vents to 100% outside air. So we can bring in lots of outside air depending on what the requirements are from the health department. So we're feeling good about that. Every room has its own system. So we're not every classroom has its own system. We're not sharing air between classrooms. So we do have everyone potted so we can actually check that out very, very easily and work through that. Others, are there other people that would like to speak to anything else? Otherwise, why don't we run through questions?
Yeah, I would love to come back. I know that Dr. Fegley, you addressed this, but I want to reiterate it because I think because I do see another question here. So it's regarding children with IEPs, that they're confirming parents are able to speak to their case managers regarding the level of instruction. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. We really encourage anybody who has a child with an IEP to have any discussions with the case managers regarding what the appropriate level of instruction is for your student. This is absolutely an IEP team decision regarding what instruction looks like. So just wanted to reiterate that one. Another question was, most of the symptoms for COVID are similar to the flu and cold. How will you determine if it's COVID or something else?
So
Hit one of those key areas, and you divide the symptoms into two groups. If you hit one in one area or two in the other, in the B box, you are going to be sent home, and you're going to be required to get a COVID test. We will not be deciding whether your fever is due to COVID or some other reason. That will be done by the Chester County Health Department will require a test. I know that because we've had various folks come in and or said they had a fever. They called their doctor, and their doctor's only answer was go get tested. So please, I highly recommend people get tested. We're going to be working with agencies here in Phoenixville. We are in contact right now with the policy lab from Children's Hospital. They are looking to see, supposedly we may be getting lots of tests from the federal government that we may be able to use to help with some of the testing and have more rapid response tests here in the area. But that's going to be testing that's shared between all districts. But yet the test is necessary. If you display one of the symptoms in box A or two or more of the symptoms in box B, you want those specific symptoms, again, please go to the health department. I also believe Dr. Whitehead has them on our website for you to go and see what those symptoms are.
And those have changed. I referenced that earlier, Dr. Fegley, that those columns were updated, which is why temperature was moved from the A column to the B column.
The B column, that's correct. Okay, Mrs. Claus or Ms. Emanuel, do you want to go through, or should we just start going through the questions that we have here to do our best to answer?
I was trying to group some of them together. So there are several about hybrids, more about hybrid question, the hybrid model. One talking specifically, give me a second here. If someone else has something they want to answer, let me just scroll back through here. I was looking for something specific. But all right, so there are two or three questions, Dr. Kilmetz, about training for the teachers on how they're being trained to actually teach in this hybrid model where they have half of their students in person and the other half virtually. Can you just give a little bit more detail on what we're doing to make sure our teachers are ready for this?
Sure. So we're having discussions currently with teachers about the recommended best practices for hybrid instruction, where you're teaching both virtual students and in-person students. Again, these are discussions because our teachers, we don't have a professional development day happening right now, and our teachers probably don't need training so much on this as they need time to practice and explore. And that's why we're telling and sharing these recommended practices now, as opposed to when we come back in that hybrid fashion, so that teachers have time to play around, to troubleshoot, to get comfortable with one model or another model or all the models prior to students returning. We're of course here to support teachers at all times. We have a wonderful instructional coach team that has been really, really valuable, especially during this period of virtual learning and now hybrid learning. So as a curriculum and instruction department, we're here to support all of our teachers, to work with all of our teachers, and to make hybrid as successful as virtual learning has been for PASD.
Well, that's a lovely segue, because there's a question from a parent. How can we support teachers with hybrid? I assume we can't volunteer to come in. So what can parents do to help?
Oh, we love that you're offering. Thank you so much. Really, what we need most is your understanding that everything is not going to be absolutely perfect on every day. Sometimes there's internet issues, sometimes there's Zoom issues, sometimes a teacher, might just need a few minutes to get everything in order for all the virtual learners and the in-person learners. So we ask for your grace and for your patience. Thank you so much. And of course, as additional opportunities to volunteer do arise, we do expect that principals and teachers will be reaching out to families. Thank you.
Dr. Kegley, there's a couple of questions about about signing up now, being able to possibly switch before January 15th, which is what we had said was the date that people can make changes. Can you just quickly address that?
Sure. We really hope that folks can make a choice and stick with it until January 15th. It helps make planning easier. We also understand there are going to be exceptions. If there's a reason for a need you to change, we ask that you call your building principal, have a conversation, and we will work with you if you need to go from virtual into the hybrid world. We will need a little bit of time to make sure that we have the space and all that, because we'll have certain things planned. The teacher will have certain areas planned. Plus, if they suddenly need the bus, we'll need at least a couple of days to get them on the bus. But we will work with you in making that happen and that occur. Going from hybrid to virtual is obviously very easy, because if you become sick, you suddenly become virtual for a couple of days. So, but that said, we would also ask if you really want to you were in the hybrid world and you now really want to go virtual, have that quick conversation, and that move can also be made. We were hoping to try to get everyone to be as solid as possible. However, we're not like some districts saying that you cannot change at all. We also have one that says about hybrid model is difficult to manage. They've heard that from other schools. There's real challenges with this. How do we plan to handle? I've got to give a lot of credit to Dr. Kilmans, Dr. Whitehead, and the principals for working with the faculty and working on making this happen well. There are going to be hiccups, as we said, but we also know that there are many good ways of making this happen. We've been in contact with other districts where it is working, and they have been going through this hybrid model for a while. So we are looking to make sure that it works as well as possible. Again, as with any change, there will be some challenges that are faced here and there.
So couple questions here. Will there be an updated school supply list sent out, or should we adhere to the original one that was initially sent out?
So I believe the supply list that was sent out should suffice, because it added things such as earphones, earbuds, and a mask. So I believe that updated version would stand and be able to transfer over to hybrid.
While we're talking about materials, will the hybrid learners need to bring all their books, notebooks, et cetera, back and forth each day in addition to the laptops?
It's a heavy load, yes. Hopefully we'll streamline that as we begin implementation about what is, materials are critically needed, what materials can, maybe come in every other day. But as Dr. Kilmans mentioned earlier, it's going to be depending on the structure, the instructional modality that the teacher may be utilizing, at that time for that particular area. So the supplies and would be needed might vary and be lighter on certain days, heavier on other days.
And we've also made some accommodations, and I've started thinking about this really strategically. So there may be some things your teacher asks you to just leave at home permanently, or some things that you will leave at school permanently, to be able to reduce that back and forth load. And in certain instances, like for example, there's some materials that PCF is actually purchasing for students to keep at home at the K-1 level. So there are certain instances where we're making those accommodations, and we'll let you know.
Dr. Kilmans,
sorry, real quick. Along those lines, there was a question, and I can't find it now, but it was relating to elementary students. Would they be able to keep their materials in their desk?
We won't be sharing desks, so yes.
all right. Dr. Kilmans, there was also a question about the materials that teachers will have available in their classrooms. I think this is probably more elementary, to use instructionally. Are they going to be limited to the same things that students will have in their home, those who are learning virtually?
No, there's some materials that we do have in the buildings that we'll still be able to make good use of, either by assigning to specific students so that they're not shared, or disinfecting between uses. So there are a lot of materials that we have in the buildings that we'll be able to make great use of.
There's a question about if a teacher has to stay home, do we have the staff to monitor those classes? That is part of what we're working on, making sure that we have necessary staff. That will actually be part of our personnel discussion this coming Wednesday. How we're going about to make sure that we have the necessary staff. We're working hard on it. Like all school districts, we are all facing a shortage. So if you have a teaching certificate and you'd like to come back and help and would like to be a sub, please give Mrs. Rockwood a call ASAP and we'll get you signed up for our sub services. We'll
There's been a question about asynchronous, about is there any possibility of having some additional asynchronous time? I think this is the parent of a high school student who is saying that her daughter is having a very difficult time getting everything done in the time allotted.
I would ask that they reach out to their counselor and Dr. Parkinson and work that through individually. If the schedule and everything is so much, they need to have that conversation, and that is an individualized situation that I don't know that I can answer, or any of us can answer really globally. But the global answer would be, please reach out to your school counselor, please reach out to the building principal and get the extra help and support that you need. We have, can high school and middle school students eat lunch with their friends? That actually, since they will be going into the areas to eat, that may be a possibility. I don't want to make that absolute guarantee because we may have to do some potting to make sure that we know how everyone is, but that is something that we can certainly look at, having folks eat lunch with their friends.
Dr. Fagley, just to follow up, there was a question that came in off of our YouTube feed that says, can secondary students utilize outside areas during lunch or study hall?
They have been using they will be, in the past, they've used the outside areas for the lunches and the study halls. So those areas would remain open given the good weather. Yes.
There's another question on YouTube about locker use.
Mm-hmm. Lockers are not going to be used.
No, yeah, it's just, there's no safe way to do that.
And actually, some will say at the Early Learning Center, you'll notice that we will have them store some of their stuff. They'll each have a locker that they can use. Those will be disinfected at the end of the day. But in order to minimize the touch, all the doors on those lockers have been removed. So they're not really lockers, they're little cubbies that the students will be able to put their material in during the day, and then we'll disinfect them each night before the next student comes in.
Will elementary teachers still have virtual office hours for students depending on grade?
You want to take that, Dr. Killis?
Sure, yes, of course. There will still be times when teachers will be able to meet with students individually or in small groups.
There's a question about special classes and how will those go? My understanding, Dr. Kilmetz, is the specials will remain in the blocks that they are and will remain in the general times that they are. So the special schedules, I think we're talking about elementary school here right now, would overall remain the same time frame as they are currently.
There may be some minor adjustments.
Yeah.
Will PALC still be using the gross motor? Oh, it went away. Hold on. Oh, gross motor area in the hall, or will they be staying in the classrooms?
Those large group instruction spaces may be utilized for certain activities, of course, maintaining social distance in those areas and making sure that any spaces are disinfected between use. But it's likely those will be utilized less frequently than they have been in the past because oftentimes they were used by classroom teachers, and that may sometimes still happen, but probably a little less frequently.
We have it, if a second, sixth, or ninth grade does not return to hybrid at this upcoming phase approach, will they be given an opportunity tour to get acclimated with the school when they do return? Yes, we will work on making sure folks have that chance to do an acclimation. I think that's what your question is. And yes, we will work on making sure each group as they come in has a chance. down the road.
There's a question here about high school music classes. Dr. Kilmetz and I have been meeting with Mr. McAdams. We're still working through that, and we'll be consulting, obviously, with Dr. Fegley on that. In terms of, we want to make sure, that certain classes indoors is a big concern with expelling air, and so that's something that we're taking a look at, those high school music classes. We're going to try to do what we can safely, but that's something that we're working through at this time with Mr. McAdams.
All right. Are we getting, we're long here. So are we about ready to? All right, the rest of if your questions were not answered, we will attempt to get them up onto the FAQs that we have on the website. Or you can reach out to one of us afterwards and we will try to make sure that we do answer. I'm just looking to see if there's any last, is there any last question that any of you
I
see?
want to address Mrs. Claus.
Yes.
One person says if no training is needed, when are they being given time to, when are they beginning time to explore and play around? I don't think we said no training is needed. I think what we were saying is we are working on training throughout in order to make sure that teachers have the training. So there is training is required, and we are going to be looking at some additional time if we start moving back in to give the teachers time and some training. So we're not saying there's no training. We're just saying our teachers are really, really good, and we've been working on this for a while. Dr. Kilmetz, Dr. Whitehead, and the principals, along with the faculty.
And there's one more that I just did want to touch on, and I'll try not to laugh. And it's not laughing at the question; it's my own. So, when will families be able to change what their decision after 1:15?
We will, yes.
So I chuckled because I'm like, we're getting through October, but yes, we're going to continue these discussions. We'll continue the chats. We're continuing to review everything and plan and go for plan Bs and Cs and Ds and Es, just so folks know we're being as flexible as possible within the constraints that are out of our control. So when I say laugh, I just mean laughing at the thought of January being kind of crazy.
Yeah, again, I think I said this back in May, June, July. The only thing I know is it's going to change. And that's the only thing I can still say now. Things will keep changing. We will keep getting new guidance, and we will need to practice the life skill of flexibility in order to meet the new changing guidance. Hopefully, we will all be able to be back soon. That is the ultimate goal, at least in my mind, to be back as soon as it's safely possible. But we will have to keep following the guidance that we're given.
That sounds like a really good last thought. However, I do want to give everyone else an opportunity if you have just one last thought that you would like to share. I'm going to start from the top of my screen. Dr. Kilmetz.
If you haven't yet completed our Skyward survey to let us know about your choice, please do so. And we're really looking forward to hopefully seeing some more students in person in a few weeks.
Thank you. Dr. Whitehead?
Yeah, there's quite a few questions or comments about the difficulty with balancing hybrid and in person. We're looking at this as an opportunity. This is a growth opportunity for us to really expand our pedagogical practices and our instructional practices. And we're actually very excited about it. Will there be challenges? Sure. Will we be working through those? Absolutely. But I think this is an opportunity that really will expand our teachers' instructional repertoire and ways that we deliver our curriculum. Thank you for all your continued support.
Wonderful. Mr. Grinstead.
I just want to take an opportunity to thank our community members as well, mostly our parents, who have really done a great job in our sports and activities world of being disciplined and stopping themselves from coming out to the fields and the practices. I think that's helped as well to keep our kids in sort of a bubble in this environment with their coaches. I really appreciate that. And I know in the past, we've always been very welcoming to parents coming out and being around. Obviously, we all know we're living in a different time, but I really do appreciate the discipline because it's allowed us to kind of live in a bubble for our coaches and our kids. And I think we're where we are right now, which is, I think, at this very moment in a really good place. And I hope that continues. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Emanuel.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate something that I've said before, and it's just to honor the concern and the questions that everybody has. I mean, this is such a challenging time with variables and unknowns, and we understand there's a lot of information and it's constantly changing. So just ask for the continued patience and understanding, and don't hesitate to reach out if you have a concern, if you have a question, reaching out to the teachers, to your building principal, to administration, especially if your student has special needs. Make sure you reach out to their case manager, and for your ELD students, to their teachers. You know, we just reach out and ask the questions. We will answer to the best of our ability. Sometimes we might say, I don't know yet, let me look into that, or we're determining that, but we absolutely will answer any questions that we can, and just want everybody to feel as at ease as possible given everything going on. So thank you all.
Dr. Fagley.
I just like to say thank you to all who joined this evening, and to all who are listening out in the YouTube world, and all who will maybe listen to this because it's a video that we'll be posting. So thank you. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your understanding. I know these are difficult times. None of us ever thought that this would be last year at this time. We never would have been thinking that we would ever be talking about hybrid, virtual, in building, out of building. It will get better. It is going to unfortunately take time, but thank you all for everything that you are doing in support of us. And again, keep letting us know how we can do and do better to support you.
And I think that's a wrap, folks. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us, both live, and those of you, as Dr. Fagley said, who will watch it. We'll have it posted on the website tomorrow. So if you want to come back, if there are things that were said that you want to check and say, wait, what did they say about that? We will have it for you to be able to review. So thank you so much for sticking with us, and for all that you're doing to make this work. So we know we can't do this alone. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Perfect.